Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you yet again another ThunderCats episode review right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, as always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's ThunderCats episode review, and this is Season 1, Episode 25, entitled What Lies Above, Part 1. Now, in this week's episode, the ThunderCats have gathered the last remaining pieces of the Thunder Tank, and they've managed to piece it together in order to create an aircraft in which Wily Cat and Wily Kit appropriately name the Feliner. They take the Feliner up above the clouds, and they find the city that they kind of stumbled upon in last week's episode when they noticed the falling scrap metal. And so they pretty much find this perpetual Laputa. This is a city that is completely levitating above the clouds and is inhabited by birds. Not to be confused with the birds that we saw back in episode 14. Different setting, different birds. And they have within their possession the Tech Stone, which is the third stone in which the ThunderCats have been looking for. Now, of course, we're dealing with another species, and a highly sophisticated one at that the birds are. You know, of course, there are formalities and whatnot, but once they cut to the chase about the business regarding the stones, this leads to a challenge that Tiger throws down, challenging the prefect of the city to a competition to, you know, pretty much see who's the better pilot. And so the stakes were this, you know, if Tigra won, then of course the ThunderCats would get the Tech Stone. If not, the birds would actually keep both the Spirit Stone and the War Stone, which of course the ThunderCats weren't about having that. However, even though Tigra won the competition, of course the birds, they didn't keep their word, and this led to the ThunderCats being under house arrest. So of course Pumyra was pretty much the main one, you know, head running this, but Lionel kind of put the plan into action where they have the Book of Omens. The Book of Omens will lead them to the Tech Stone. Screw it, let's just go after the Tech Stone ourselves. And so in their pursuit of the Tech Stone, and then of course Pumyra's kind of I guess you could say blunt and drastic actions, anywho, this leads the ThunderCats to a predicament in which they are kind of, while the Tech Stone is within their grasp, they are also surrounded by enemy forces. That's kind of where this episode leaves off. And so I just want to give you all pretty much my thoughts on this week's episode. I like this week's episode. I liked it a lot, for various reasons, which I'll get into. First off, you all will remember I made the comment, and I keep making the comment until I see anything that suggests the contrary, that we are approaching the end of the series. And like I said, because the first season has 26 episodes, and when Cartoon Network did their press release, ThunderCats was not on it to be renewed for a second season. So this is pretty much, for all intent and purpose, the last 2 episodes. What I like in this week's episode is that this week's episode kind of they make references to a lot of the things that happened previously in the series. Like when the ThunderCats take the Feliner up when they're flying to the city, they spot a lot of the locations that they've previously been to in the series, like the Enchanted Forest, the Fisherman Oasis, the Elephants Sanctuary. Like they point all those places out while they're flying. Another thing I like is that they bring a lot of things back into this week's episode, like the whole idea of the superior species amongst the animals, the magical bag, which I thought, you know, that whole episode, I was like, man, this episode's pretty much filler. But no, the magical bag reappeared in this week's episode. So I like that they are reincorporating a lot of the elements that they have already established in the series. They're bringing them back. Very nice. Very nice. Another thing I like in this week's episode is pretty much the roles that the ThunderCats had in this week's episode. Everyone had something to do. Even Wily Cat and Wily Kit had something to do. Hell, even Snarf had something to do. And I like that. I liked how everyone kind of got their own little task for this episode. With Lion-O, it was pretty much Lion-O more or less was acting like a king, if nothing else. He was the one who was the most polite. He was the one who was the most diplomatic. You know, he is trying to negotiate for the Tech Stone. He's not just trying to run up there and, you know, take it, seize it for himself. No, he is presenting himself as a leader. He's presenting himself as a diplomat, and he's trying to negotiate reasonable treaties with these other species, especially one as sophisticated as the birds. And I loved it. It showed a level of maturity that we've only seen in Lion-O in bits and pieces throughout the series. This seems like the Lion-O that we've been building up to, which is what I like. Tigra discovered that he had a knack for piloting, which was a nice little throwback, because you'll remember they mentioned that the tigers were, you know, the great pilots. So Tigra discovered that he had a knack for piloting, and I like that, because if the series had been picked up for a second season, then this could have potentially led to Tigra being like their main aviator, which I dig. Panthro, you know, got hit with, you know, fear of heights, and it kind of weighed, you know, it kind of weighed its toll on him, took its toll on him throughout the entire episode. Put his life in jeopardy, matter of fact, in this episode. So you got Panthro trying to like overcome this fear of heights. Pumyra, man, you talk about the headstrong. I mean, Pumyra was blunt, radical, harsh, gutsy. I mean, while at some points I felt like at some points I didn't care for it, we need that, because I feel like that's significant to Pumyra's character, but also it creates the dichotomy between her and Lion-O. You know, one is more cool-headed, one is more hot-headed. One is more rational, one is more emotional. You need that type of dichotomy, and I'm glad that they're establishing that with her character. Also, if it wasn't for Pumyra behaving the way she did in this episode, then we wouldn't have a plot, because it's her actions that the events transpire in the episode. Her actions set everything into motion. Wily Kid and Wily Cat, once again, playing up what they do best. They are clever, they are witty, and they are master improvisers. You know, there were two scenes in particular. The scene in which they were told, okay, you know, mind your manners, kids, you know, eat what's put in front of you. They're like, well, screw that. We brought our own food in the magic bag. You see what I'm saying? They're improvising. And then, of course, they were assigned with the task of getting to the feliner, and pretty much, I don't know if they were just supposed to keep watch there, or if they were actually supposed to set it up to where when the rest of the team got there, they'd be able to take off. But they were supposed to go and pretty much tend to the feliner. And once again, they're thinking, it's like, oh wow, it's surrounded by guards. What could we possibly do in order to, you know, in order to be successful? You had Snarf cause a distraction, and then Wily Kid and Wily Cat improvising. I mean, and then the whole scene where they were like, oh my God, you know, we can't fly. And Wily Kid's like, when did we ever need the feliner in order to fly? And so they started using their boards. That's what I'm saying. That constant reassertion of their character, that whole cleverness, that whole ability to outsmart their opponent, they continue with that, and I like seeing that. The only character that I felt like didn't really do shit in this episode, and you all know because it's the only one I haven't mentioned, is fucking Chitara. She didn't do anything. Not really. So, what to say about that? Yeah. Now, let me see. What else did I want to talk about in this week's episode? Oh, another thing I like about this week's episode, we got more backstory about what happened after Pumyra was defeated, you know, after the rebellion. And we learned that the stones weren't just lost, they were actually purposely separated, which I figured as much. I mean, because when you think about it, remember all the trouble they had to go to in order to find the Spirit Stone, and remember all the trouble they had to go to in order to get the Book of Omens. Like, I knew that these stones weren't just scattered, like they were purposely placed where they were. And we learned that it was actually the four, I guess you could say, the four most powerful species that took one stone for themselves in order to protect it. But then again, we learned that the cats, they broke that treaty when they used the war stone, when they kept the war stone for themselves and used it to their nefarious means. Apparently, they also pitted species against each other so that they would weaken those species, and so that those species wouldn't be able to rise up against them. Very interesting. I really did enjoy that exposition, and I am much. This makes me much more interested into learning more about the history of Thundera, like how the cat kingdom, like their line and how everything went. I'm really interested in seeing more about that, but yeah, we all know, yeah. Anywho, but that's going to wrap up this week's ThunderCats review. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week, and in the comments below, let me know what you guys thought about this week's episode, and let me know what you all think is going to go down in next week's episode. You know, I guess the premature series finale, if you will. But anywho, that's going to wrap it up for me. Keep an eye out for my Legend of Korra episode review. That'll be uploaded later tonight. And until next time, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.